Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky, alongside my friend, partner, buddy, Dwight Brown. Dwight Brown, how are you?
David Turetsky, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's been a very strange morning. It was 24 degrees out here, and I don't know why I'm surprised by the fact that it's actually still winter, still meteorological, forget it. It's still winter.
It's still winter.
But you know what's exciting, Dwight?
Tell me.
Today we get to talk to Kathy Hammond. Kathy, welcome.
Thanks. Really looking forward to our discussion.
Kathy, before we get started, give us a little bit of background on who you are, what you do, and how you got to this moment in time.
Okay. I've been in sales my entire career. And, over the years, and as I've, of course, experienced job hunting myself and so on, and I always wondered, why someone was making the decisions that they were making. So as I had progressed throughout my sales career, and then eventually after graduate school, that I became really interested in workforce solutions. So, and I had worked with a company for an employee engagement surveys, and then I went to work for a company called PSI Services, and they were one of the largest employee selection testing companies in the U.S. And so learned quite a bit there. So as I started pairing the two and seeing how that could really be leveraged to even to improve a company's sales position. So I created I built a sales recruiting agency called SalesFit. And from SalesFit, I had developed a system that would reliably identify, attract, engage, and vet high-performing salespeople. And so from that, I started, of course, then marketing that particular system to other companies who could benefit from that. So, and that leads me to today.
Excellent. Kathy, what we always ask of our guests is, what's one fun thing that no one knows about Kathy Hammond?
It's funny you asked because, and I had brought that up to my husband the other day, and we've been married a long time, and he said, really? I learned, I used to work at the Guam Hilton at the front desk when I was going to the University of Guam. And I actually brought in someone from the university to come teach us Japanese because we were dealing with so many Japanese tourists. And one of the things, because what would happen is the tour buses would come in and they would let off a whole group of Japanese tourists, and they would come to the front desk and they'd have to get their keys. So I would just stand there at that big wall of all the keys, and they would be shouting room numbers, and I had to pull all the keys. So I learned how to count in Japanese. And for whatever reason, I could just count endlessly because we had 365 hotel rooms at that time.
Wow.
And so I had to at least be able to count to 365. But I could count beyond that. So,
that's crazy. I can imagine what it's like to be standing at the counter with a bunch of people who just got off a tour, whether they're Japanese tourists or anybody, clamoring for their keys. So, wow, you must have a patience of a saint.
I had a good memory, too.
That always helps.
Yeah,
not when it comes to my husband, though. He doesn't like my memory. As I'm sure
you got selective memory.
Yeah.
As we know in relationships, it's sometimes good to have a long memory and sometimes very short.
Yes.
But we're not going to have a conversation today about that. Today, we're going to have a really fun one. So let's get to the topic. Our topic for today is the criticality of data in sales recruitment to hire high-performing sales professionals. So, Kathy, what's the biggest mistake hiring managers make when having a need to hire a sales rep?
Hey, this is William Tincup, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Practitioner Corner podcast. It's a wonderful podcast about the journey, the paths of how practitioners, both HR and TA, kind of go from high school, college, all the way to where they are right now, some of the things that they've learned, how they've been successful, people that thrive around them, etc. It's a fun podcast. You'll love it. You'll learn from it. Subscribe to it. Thanks.
A couple of mistakes. They don't know what a high-performing salesperson looks like. They don't know the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they need to possess, and then the experience. And if they're not able to identify that themselves, or they've not identified it, as well as not understanding the company's sales process so that you can align those skills with that process to make sure that they can actually perform all of those various tasks. If they're not able to, if they don't have that information, they don't have that data, they're not able to convey that to the HR talent acquisition or recruiters. So they don't know really what they're looking for.
Don't you think they actually have an example of person on their team and that is kind of high performant, and they can go, well, can we look at somebody who's just like Barbara and hire Barbara again somewhere?
Yeah, they could. I don't see that a lot of them do it, but they certainly could do that. But they'd also have to make sure that Barbara really is a high-performing salesperson.
Right.
Because we hire people they're good, but it doesn't mean that they're high-performing at the top of the game. Because it's really, what is it they're trying to achieve? And so that's where that disconnect is.
And could they explain it? Could they explain what makes Barbara high performant? And could they put it in a job description? And what are the attributes of Barbara, or what are the attributes of the person who they would like? Or maybe it's a combination of a bunch of different things.
Well, you really need to start at the actual requirements. What is it that you're, first of all, trying to achieve? Who are you going after? What kind of clients? What level are they at? And then you would have to conduct a job analysis to really determine all of the different steps that are involved, all the different requirements somebody has to be able to perform. And I've often said, in my 30 plus years in sales, in going through a job interview, and I'm talking Fortune 100 companies on down, I've never once been asked to prove that I can actually perform the skills necessary for success on the job at that company. Once you start identifying that, then you can go in and you can take, say, Barbara, and say, okay, does Barbara know how to prospect?
Right.
And what does that mean to us, prospecting? Does Barbara know how to conduct demonstrations? Can she write proposals? I mean, are all of these things that necessary for success on the job at your company? Because what's going to be at your company is not going to be required at another company. So you have to be able to do that alignment. And I like to think of us as really as human capital alignment specialists,
right? Because
that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Do you feel that it's possible to also boil that down to the vital few? In other words, if you were to pick 3 key competencies for a job that really represented 90% of what's necessary in that job, do you think companies do that?
No. And
that's not good.
Well, I would say, that when we look at all of the different skills that are required or the tasks to be performed for a sales job, I mean, we've identified 24 of them. And so in order for you to be a high-performing salesperson, you need to be able to hit the mark on each one of those. So if they're just even if they take the top 3, if they identify that, but they generally don't, because there's so much bias in the hiring process that, they're not even looking at that. They're looking at, do I like the look of you? Do we share some things in common? Do we have good chemistry? And they have views of salespeople. They should be outgoing. And there's no evidence to support. There's never been a study that's ever supported that introverts cannot be as successful in sales as an extrovert. So, yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions around it.
But because we're talking about hiring managers now,
Mhm.
and hiring managers typically get put into these roles, not necessarily because they're good managers, but because they're good salespeople. And when they get elevated to these levels, when they try and start to repeat the process of hiring someone, you brought up bias before. Isn't it their inherent bias that they want to hire someone literally just like them?
Yeah.
To say, well, I was a successful salesperson. I want to hire someone just like me.
Right.
Dwight, you're just like me. You have facial hair. You're a guy. I want to hire you.
Exactly.
I mean, isn't that really what's in the mentality of a hiring manager in the sales world? Sorry, by the way, all the salespeople that they think I'm beating on them. I'm a salesperson too. I know what I'm talking about here. But Kathy, is that kind of where the sales that hiring manager is in the sales world?
Yes, and what's ironic about that is that they themselves, maybe they got promoted. It doesn't mean that they really were the high performing salesperson.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have mediocre hiring managers hiring mediocre salespeople because they're alike, and that's what they're comfortable with, and that's where they run into that danger.
And that's the exact reason why the Peter Principle exists, because people get raised to their level of incompetence. And that's just kind of factual there.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
So let's go to our second question, which is really now taking it from another perspective, which is taking it from the perspective of the recruiters. So what's the biggest mistake recruiters, talent acquisition professionals make when they get that job requisition about sales?
They don't question enough about what is required. That's one thing. And they're not collecting the correct data in order to actually make a placement, a really good placement. They don't track their numbers. It's funny because sales is metric driven. And yet the hiring for salespeople rarely is. And so that needs to be foremost also with with talent acquisition and HR, understanding that, what it is that they're actually looking for, and then also knowing where to go to find that talent. And then being able to track their numbers so that they can improve upon what they're doing.
Now, I've met a lot of recruiters in the sales space, and one of the things that they typically talk to me about is assessments. Them doing assessments on people that are applying for the sales roles. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those assessments are for capabilities and competencies, but sometimes they're for cultural fit into organizations. When you talk about the typical sales process not having numbers or not having, the activity or the data, are you talking about it from the, time to fill and that kind of thing? Or are you talking about it from the assessments perspective?
Now, I'm talking about the activities surrounding the sourcing of the candidate.
Okay.
And if they're tracking from where they're getting those particular candidates and then ensuring that they're meeting certain criteria. But again, it goes back to the hiring manager. They have to give the correct data.
Okay.
We have approximately in our process of collecting information from clients, and then what we teach also at the Recruit Salute is we have 121 different points of data collection to understand what it is that we're looking for. So this, but when it comes to the talent acquisition and HR, and even for third-party recruiters, it's really making sure that they're refining their search, and they can only do that by looking at the data from different various data points, where they're sourcing, what quality, what are the different benchmarks that they have for the talent that's required in order to even move them through that talent pipeline.
So it's not just the one-off sales hire, it's the constant drumbeat and being able to get all the data from your drumbeat to know what's been successful, what's not been successful, and how do you contemplate the appropriate sources of hire and cadence of hiring and whatnot. You need to collect all that data that you're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Because what happens is that there's a blame game that goes on between the hiring managers and the talent acquisition, who's responsible for TA. And it's only because that they're not both reviewing the data from the start, and then being able to refine. So if a hiring manager will hire someone that TA brought in, and then that person doesn't work out, and then they come back and say, hey, that's your fault, the hiring manager to the TA people, that's your fault. You brought me the wrong person. And it's like, if we're all reviewing, we're all on the same page from the very beginning, then problem should not occur.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it shouldn't be of them against, the recruiters or the HR, but that it's your team, you're in it together. So.
Wait, didn't the hiring manager actually meet the person? Didn't they interview them? Didn't they spend the time to review all the data and all the resume and the back? Didn't they actually put any effort into it before they did, the blame game?
Oh, absolutely. However, fewer than 5% of hiring managers have received like an hour's worth of training on how to hire people. I mean, hiring is a science. I mean, it's not something you wing it. But that's what they're doing because no one's been trained. So
wait, are you telling me, Kathy, that managers don't grow up knowing how to hire people?
No, can you believe that?
It's hard to believe. It's shocking.
Yeah,
but we've been espousing things like training for managers, for leaders for a while, not just in the recruiting space, but for everything. I mean, they need help. They need that assistance. We don't grow up, when we're playing, what role do you want to be when you grow up? No one says, I want to be a leader. No one says, I want to be a manager. Oh, you have to do a performance evaluation today. Nah, I don't want to do performance evaluation. Well, that's actually what people say today.
I'm going to be a firefighter. I'm going to be a sales manager.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing too. That's funny that you say that about firefighters. I mean, the amount of screening and for them to get in, because I worked on the city of Los Angeles for their fire department for the employee selection, and they have to go through a lot in order to even get there. And then once they're there, then they have to be trained.
Right.
There's no barrier to entry to sales. So anybody that somehow it's like some people just say, well, it's my fallback position. If I can't become X, I'll become a salesperson.
Right.
And then, so they're in there, and then somehow they manage to get up into a hiring manager role. And it's just that no one takes that seriously, that they need that training in order to understand actually how to do it. But here I went to graduate school, and I have a master's in organizational management with emphasis in HR management. We spent one course, that was it, in anything relating to writing job descriptions, interviewing, and all of this. And even then I thought, oh, this is nonsense. But that's all that they're even teaching at the university level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, where do you pick this up? How do you learn it? And it's incumbent upon senior leaders of an organization to make sure their people are trained to perform the jobs that they're doing.
It takes the vision of a CEO or, probably the top leader to say, this is what we need, this is what we're going to do. But too often it doesn't happen.
Right. Well, as a CHRO, I know that one of the things we're going to focus on this year is leadership development. And, getting that to be an agreed upon goal is tough. I mean, it's obvious, but it's tough.
Right.
Yep.
Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast. A free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today. So let's go to the third question, which is really fascinating, kind of brings these two pieces together. It's why don't we all get along, or why don't the hiring manager and the TA team and the recruiting team, why don't they work together for better hires? And can you give us some examples of what working together could look like?
Sure. I think that there's some ego at play. And if you don't know something, you don't want to reveal that by sitting down with somebody else to say, okay, how do we do this together, right? Simply the way to do that is really put your egos aside, be able to come to the table, sit down and really start mapping out, okay, first of all, like in the case of sales, what is the sales process? You have to understand what the sales process is. It's shocking that a lot of sales leaders have no idea. They cannot identify the various stages of their sales process and articulate it. I mean, if we've got, 21 that we in the job analysis, that's the sales process. They have to take it from cold, from start at the very beginning, all the way down to not just the closing of the sale, but beyond that to referrals and customer maintenance and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and then the hiring manager being able to educate the talent acquisition, the HR people on exactly what that is and what that means. So when I say, if you ask anybody in a job interview, you're going to say, well, how do you feel about cold calling? Well, they want the job. If they want the job, they're going to tell you, hey, I love it. And then you will never see them pick up the phone. They're just not going to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how do you uncover that? So it's then really making sure that you have all of the various questions for each aspect of that sales process to be able to uncover that those that can and those who can't perform that role.
Right. But that's why I was asking a little bit before about assessments, because it's so hard to ask a question where someone just doesn't come back with a baloney answer that says yes, right? Do you like cold calling? Or, are you good at cold calling? Well, sure. Yeah. Who isn't? I get a list of people, call them one at a time, make them a best friend, and, sell them a ton of stuff. No, that's not really cold calling.
Right.
So how, is there a role for assessments in this where, both the TA team and the manager can sit down together, take a library of good questions around the competency, and then be able to ferret out what actually makes sense to be able to have people respond to and do so accurately?
There are some good sales assessments, for example, but they have to be validated for that particular role in order for them to really be able to predict performance.
Sure.
However, what we have in one aspect of our program is that we have all of the questions, the interview questions for hiring managers to ask, along with the behavioral anchored rating scale, so that you can see where on the spectrum that individual, where they fall, specific to that job task. So we don't just say, do you like, to cold call, how is that? It's like, describe a time that you had to do this. Mm-hmm. And then you want to hear the details, but then you don't want to leave that to chance either for somebody to make an assessment. Oh, that sounds good or that doesn't. We give them from subject matter experts in sales, from the not qualified all the way to the well qualified, so that they say, this is what you should be hearing at this higher level, because it's a matter of elevating the performance in the organization, not just like, okay, they can do the job. You have, what do they say? 20% of people in the organization are doing 80% of producing 80% of the results. That's in all departments, including sales. But you have to know what that looks like. What do really high performing candidates say to that question? Mm-hmm. And so they should be developing those questions together, HR and hiring manager, to really, and again, by each of the job tasks within that job analysis.
So really, they're taking the job description and they're going through it with the hiring manager. And the TA person is actually going to list, here are the ones where we need to have some understanding about what the behavioral anchors are here. that you're going to be judging the people against. And let's give you some advice and training on how to listen for the right things and score them appropriately as to their level as well as their ability to fit into what you need.
Well, it's like, forget the job description. You have to go from that job analysis, break down that job. What exactly does that person have to do? And then you have to then develop the question or a couple of questions, because you might have a couple of other people asking. So, and develop the interview question so that, because now, first of all, this is going to eliminate hiring bias, because once you're able to score upon that, you're going off of a number. You're not going off of that manager's interpretation. It's off of what they heard.
Right.
But that's where HR, talent acquisition, can help with the hiring manager, because the hiring manager is not going to know how to do any of this. And that part of it, the interview, that's one leg of the hiring process. Because, of course, you want to go back and check references and all of that. But, it's like I've said, and I mean, prior to Workforce Solutions that I've been in, I had a long career in commercial security systems. And then also wholesale alarm monitoring on a national scale. And our customers were what they called door knockers. These were companies that would put out an army of people out into the field to sell alarm systems door to door. That is a completely different skill set. I mean, these college students making a ton of money, the really good one, but it's a different type of sale. So, I couldn't do it, go door to door and try to sell something. It's sales skill, but it's a different thing altogether.
Right.
And so they have to have agreed upon measurements between HR and the hiring managers. Everyone have to be speaking the same language, and then also knowing how to measure that. To set it all up can be time, if they're doing it from scratch themselves, is time consuming, can be expensive. They may need an IO psychologist. I mean, our stuff has been developed in conjunction with IO psychologists, but in the long run, they're just able to easily replicate it each time that they need someone. So, it's an investment up front, but it's understanding the process. The job description gets written after they identify exactly what is needed, because that job descriptions are a legal document.
Right.
So it's important for them to also have that accountability factor in there. I'm not going to just tell you that you need to be doing cold calls. You need to be doing at least 200 cold calls per week, in order to get these results. But you have to, again, it all comes back to data. It's all measurements.
Can I go back to something you mentioned before that you touched on lightly, but I think it's really critical, is the reference call. Now, obviously, you can't ask people to sign anything saying, oh, yeah, this person was great at this or that or the other thing. But I think one of the things that we don't do a very good job of it, what is the structure of a successful reference check?
Asking the right questions.
Right. But that's my question. What are those right questions? Because you can't ask certain things and people won't answer other things.
Right.
So how do you ask? How do you know what the right questions are?
And so we have a form that we use for the because we're talking about their performance, but we're talking about it and we're asking them in such a way for certain elements about their motivation, about how they overcome obstacles, and give it, like if they have examples that they have to share. It's almost like interviewing them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And yeah, and it's not just, what can you share with me about this candidate, because it's name, rank, and serial number, for fear of being sued. But this is different, the process that we take by, asking, generally, but really about their how they are functioning on the job. How are they getting along with team members? How were their relationships with the clients? If they're in sales, and again, it depends upon the job itself.
Sure.
But it's, structuring those questions so that you're having a conversation, not just getting rote answers from employers who may be afraid to respond.
And to your point, name, rank, and serial number, right?
Yeah, right. And one thing I've noticed is that the really high performing people, these managers want to gush about what this person did, but then they're also really honest, because I ask, what was one thing that you would have liked to have seen different, in like something that maybe was a challenge for them? And when they go through all the positive stuff, they're very happy to come in with this. This is where there might be, where they could use some additional coaching.
I've had some of those calls too, Kathy, and I got to be honest with you. I appreciate more when they want to know the full circle, the rounded questions like you just mentioned, relative to the ones who go, so were they a good employee or not? What? What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Would you hire them again?
Tell me the value in that answer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There really is. So I'm glad that there is an answer for what's an appropriate way of being able to ask a reference for, how would they fit in? And, not asking too much, but asking just enough to be able to be a little more successful in the choice and in making the right decisions for hiring.
Right.
Kathy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You're obviously a treasure trove and a really brilliant representative of this process. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really enlightening.
Thank you. Gosh, that was fast.
Well, as we say, once we get past our technology issues, usually it actually goes by really quickly. So thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here, Kathy.
Dwight, thank you as well.
Thank you. It's been great. Now we're all ready for the weekend.
So everybody take care, stay safe, and we'll talk again soon.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.